The question that I'm inquiring today is, what is a thought? And before I try to understand what is a thought, I would like to ask the question, what does it mean to think? And what is the process and act of thinking? And what science, in particular neurobiology, has to say about thought, thinking, and the act of thinking? Neurobiology treats thought as a dynamic activity that happens in your brain. It's a physically generated entity that happens in your brain, and it's not a singular activity. It it is um, it is activity that happen in different regions of the brain, and those are prefrontal cortex and parietal cortex and hippocampus and amygdala. So with all those reasons, they give their input to the thought, and hence thought arises. It's so we can say a thought is a chemically and electrically electrical activity. So it's more or less science. That's what more or less science has to say about it. That it's just it's just activity. It's just impulse, and there are two modes of thinking. One is fast automatic mode, and the second is slow and deliberate and effortful. So most thought are fast and automatic, right? For example, and we have understand this that a thought is is a network of neurons firing together. That's what neurobiology has to say about it. What great philosopher has to say about what philosophy in particular has to say about thought and thinking. Uh, what Friedrich Nietzsche says is sort of very similar to what science says about the thought. As Friedrich Nietzsche said, that a thought is an impulse, uh, which more or less sums it up, because Friedrich Nietzsche was not a scientist, but still he managed to point out that that thought is impulsive. It just happens. That you have no voluntary control over it. More or less, you don't. And but but this is the one thing, and Friedrich Nietzsche pretty much you know. But there are other philosophers that has to say a lot about thought and thinking, and it begins with the ancient philosophies of India, Greece, and Chinese. Uh, in Indian philosophy, there is not much directly said about thought, and if there is much, I'm not familiar with it. But as much as I try to search it, there's not much directly said about the thought. But Greek had to say a lot about thought and thinking, and it came Socrates, and Socrates says, yes, it is, but we should also try to examine our thought and thinking. The thought and thinking shouldn't be left unexamined, and he also famously said that unexamined life is not worth living. And then came Plato, and Plato said that most of the time the thinking is tied to appearance, and we should also question that, because our thinking is mostly related to appearances. We also seek for the truth uh, uh, behind the thinking, and we should also, because thinking most time is prejudice. We are prejudgments. So he pointed that out, and then came with Aristotle, and Aristotle famously said that thinking and reasoning is the feature of humans. Try to it he tried to isolate human from other organisms and try to give them new definition, and said that reason and thinking is uh, is a very humanist feature. And then great Stoics like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, and they said that with the control of with the control of a thought, you can have freedom. You should try to discipline your thinking and the way you think. And that's pretty much what ancient Greeks has to say about thinking and thought. And then the thought came to to medieval Western era, and those people were obsessed with try to relate thought and faith, and reasoning and faith, and they thought that it was their best way, and at the most effort and deliberate way that they could define thinking and the the state of being. And very famous, the most famous uh, um, the most famous philosophers of that period were obsessed with that faith and reason could collaborate with each other and can seek for the truth. And the famous people among them were Thomas Aquinas, Duns Scotus, and for a longer period of time, thought was um, in this captive of faith. And then came the Rene Descartes, and Rene Descartes said that we he said that because I think I exist, my existence is directly related to thinking, is that directed directly related to my existence is directly related to the thinking. And he said that I think, therefore I am. And which means that if he doesn't think, he doesn't exist. And that's pretty much is sums it up for Rene Descartes. And as I've just pointed out that uh, uh, what Friedrich Nietzsche had to say about the thought. Now, this is what science and philosophy has to say about a thought. The thinking, in my opinion, thinking is the impulse of your consciousness, and the way human uh, have always enjoyed the privilege of defining a thinking, because humans had nothing to compare uh, themselves to. They next to us were animals, and we said that, well, we are self-conscious, and because we were aware that there are impulses in animals too. So does that mean they are thinking? Well, the science is that they are conscious, but they are not self-consciousness. They don't have the emotion of guilt or suffering, or they suffer, but reverence, repentance, they don't have those things. And humans enjoyed that privilege because we had nothing to compare ourselves with. Next to animals, we were uh, more, intelligent beings, and we were the one who had the concept of thought and consciousness. But as we are progressing, and as the technology is advancing, it will become very difficult to define what is thinking, because what all those decisions humans were able to take without uh, the help of the technology, we used to define that as thinking. And now, with the rise of the machine, it will be really difficult to define those things. What is a think, and what does it mean to think? What actually is a thing? What actually is a thought? And how we are different from the machines, and how the way they are taking decisions is different from ours. And the it has this whole idea is crashing down, that we somehow were the only beings that could think.